Join me as I dive deep into the real reasons we follow leaders and take on the challenge of uncovering why it could be dangerous for us. When we think about following leaders, we often think about the benefits, having a sense of direction, feeling part of a community, and achieving great things together. But have you ever stopped to think about the potential dangers of following leaders? Today, we're going to explore the real reasons we follow leaders and why it's so important to be aware of our motivations. Blind loyalty to leaders is a huge issue in our society. When we put our faith in someone without questioning their motives or actions, we can end up being manipulated and losing our critical thinking skills. We've seen it time and time again throughout history, charismatic leaders rising to power and leading their followers down a path of destruction. It's a risk we can't afford to take, especially in today's complex and rapidly changing world. The truth is, when we follow a leader without questioning them, we're putting ourselves at risk of being manipulated and losing our autonomy. We have to be aware of the ways in which leaders can use our emotions and desires to control us, and we have to be willing to speak up when we see something that doesn't feel right. Blind loyalty is not just a personal problem. It can have far-reaching consequences for our communities and our world. Following a leader can also be a way of outsourcing our own moral responsibility. When we put our faith in a leader, we can start to believe that we don't have to think for ourselves anymore, that someone else will take care of everything for us. But that's not only untrue, it's also incredibly dangerous. When we abdicate our responsibility to think critically and make our own decisions, we can end up supporting policies and actions that go against our values. We have to remember that leaders are human beings, just like us, and they're not infallible. They can make mistakes, and they can have their own agendas that don't align with ours. By following a leader without questioning them, we're putting ourselves at risk of supporting something that goes against our own values and principles. One of the most insidious risks of following a leader is that we can lose our sense of self. When we define ourselves by our loyalty to a particular leader or cause, we can start to lose our own identity and autonomy. We can become so caught up in the group mentality that we forget what we truly believe in and what we stand for. This can be incredibly damaging, not just to ourselves, but to our relationships and our communities. When we lose our sense of self, we can become vulnerable to manipulation and control. So why do we follow leaders in the first place? One reason is that we have a deep-seated desire for belonging. We want to be part of a community, to feel like we're connected to something bigger than ourselves. And leaders often offer us a sense of belonging and community that we can't find anywhere else. We also have a natural tendency to trust authority figures, from our parents and teachers to our politicians and leaders. We're wired to respond to authority, and leaders know how to use this to their advantage. But we have to be aware of these desires and tendencies and make sure we're not blindly following someone just because it feels good to belong. Another reason we follow leaders is that we want to feel safe and secure. We want to believe that someone has our backs, that someone is looking out for us, and leaders often promise us protection and security in exchange for our loyalty. But this desire for safety can also be used against us. Leaders can use our fears and anxieties to manipulate us and control us. They can promise us security in exchange for our freedom, and we have to be aware of these tactics. The desire for trust is also a major motivator for following leaders. We want to believe that someone is honest and trustworthy, that they have our best interests at heart. But we have to be careful not to confuse trust with blind loyalty. Just because we trust someone doesn't mean we should follow them without questioning their actions and motives. We have to be willing to hold our leaders accountable, even if we trust them. Let's take a look at the example of Charles Manson, the infamous cult leader who led his followers to commit heinous crimes in the 1960s. On the surface, Manson seemed like a charismatic and trustworthy leader. He was charming, confident, and had a compelling vision for a better world. But beneath the surface, he was manipulating and controlling his followers, using their desires and fears to get them to do his bidding. This is a classic example of the dangers of blind loyalty. Manson's followers were so caught up in their desire to belong and trust in authority that they lost all sense of critical thinking and moral responsibility. Manson's followers were not bad people. They were ordinary human beings who were looking for a sense of community and belonging. But they let their desires cloud their judgment, and they ended up supporting something that was truly evil. This is a powerful reminder that we always have to be aware of our motivations and desires, and we have to be willing to question our leaders and hold them accountable. The lessons we can learn from this example are invaluable. We have to be careful not to let our desires for belonging and trust cloud our judgment, and we have to be willing to speak up when we see something that doesn't feel right. We also have to remember that leaders are human beings just like us, and they're not infallible. They can make mistakes, and they can have their own agendas that don't align with ours. So what's the takeaway from all of this? The real reason we follow leaders is often more complex than we think. It's not just about achieving a common goal or feeling part of a community. It's about our deep-seated desires for belonging, trust, and security. And we have to be aware of these desires and make sure we're not blindly following someone just because it feels good. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to learn more about leadership dynamics and the psychology of following, be sure to check out our next video on the topic.